How would the Simpsons keep calling
Predicting
it?
everything.
They predicted the Apple Vision Pro. There's an old Simpsons episode where people are walking around with those goggles and they're falling into manholes, and now you're seeing people out there in the street swiping things and moving away and wearing these goggles on the street.
From manned missions to Mars to AI robots, NFTs, and mind control through music, these are 10 insane Simpsons predictions for 2025 that we pray do not come true. In the Simpsons episode Margian Chronicles, Season 27, Episode 16, the Simpsons volunteer for a mission to colonize Mars. Initially set for a distant future, their mission gets bumped up when funding starts to dry up. But when it's time to launch, Marge and Lisa are ready to board the spaceship, only for the shuttle to fail at the last minute. Now I know what you're thinking, the Simpsons predicting Mars missions, that's a bit of a stretch, but in reality, we've been hearing a lot of talk about Mars recently. Elon Musk has been talking about colonizing Mars for years. In fact, his company SpaceX has been testing Starship launches for potential Mars missions. Musk has even said that he envisions regular trips to Mars to eventually build a self-sustaining colony, saying, quote, "No matter what happens with landing success, SpaceX will increase the number of spaceships traveling to Mars exponentially with every transit opportunity. We want to enable anyone who wants to be a space traveler to go to Mars. That means you, your family, or friends, anyone who dreams of great adventure." NASA is also working on sending astronauts to an asteroid in 2025 and are hoping to send crewed missions to the Red Planet by the 2030s. The idea that we could be looking at Mars colonization within the next few decades is looking pretty plausible. Let's just hope things won't play out like they did in the cartoon with the shuttle exploding, but the fact that we are seriously talking about sending humans to Mars in the near future is something that really can't be ignored. Now, in the classic Simpsons episode Itchy and Scratchy Land from Season 6, the Simpsons visit a high-tech theme park where the violent cartoon antics of Itchy and Scratchy come to life. Not through human actors and costumes, but through robots. Now, this isn't exactly a groundbreaking idea, right? Sci-fi has been toying with the concept of robots replacing jobs pretty much since the beginning of sci-fi, but all the same, looking at it today, we're seeing robots become more and more advanced every year. And with AI becoming a massive force in our world, it's not that far-fetched to imagine a future where instead of actors in cartoon character costumes, we have full-on functioning robots bringing some of our favorite animated characters to life at theme parks. In the Simpsons episode Bart to the Future, which we'll be bringing up multiple times on this list, which is Season 11, Episode 17, in case you want to give it a rewatch, Lisa Simpson becomes the first female president of the United States, but what else did that episode predict? Well, it also forecasted Donald Trump's presidential run. Remember, this was years before he even ran for office in 2016, so if the Simpsons got that right, maybe we should start taking their political predictions a bit more seriously. Also, buying a Christmas tree during the Halloween season. In this opening scene, Homer, dressed as Bender from Futurama, pulls back the flap of his costume to reveal a sticker reading Ivanka 2028. Now, the idea of Ivanka Trump running for president might seem kinda silly, but I feel like I'm probably speaking for a lot of us when I say I really don't know what to expect from the world I'm living in these days. I don't think anything would surprise us at this point. Will she run in 2028? Only time will tell, but we wouldn't be shocked if we start hearing whispers about it in the very near future. Now let's talk about something that might be a little closer to home, pun intended. In the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror episode from Season 13, Marge upgrades the family home into a state-of-the-art smart house called the Ultra House 3000. If you remember the episode, it's basically a 2001 A Space Odyssey parody, and of course the house goes rogue, starts trying to kill Homer. A bit over the top, sure, but here's the thing. Smart homes are already here, and they're getting way more advanced. We've got devices like Alexa and Google Home that can control everything from the lights to your music, but the more people rely on these gadgets, the more we've started to notice some weird quirks. Lights turning off without command, or Alexa butting in on a conversation without being asked. It's like every now and again these machines start to act a little too sentient. So while we haven't yet seen a smart home completely turn on its owners and try to kill them, it's not entirely out of the realm of possibility maybe. With AI getting smarter and tech getting more embedded in our everyday lives, who knows, maybe one day you'll have to make sure your smart fridge isn't secretly plotting your demise.
Number 6, live on Mars.
In season 27, episode 16, The Margian Chronicles, Marge and Lisa volunteer themselves to be among the first humans to fly and live on Mars. Now this is done with Exploration Inc., the private firm that hopes to send people to colonize Mars by 2026. And as the episode ends, Marge and Lisa live on Mars together in 2050. In the real world, Elon Musk's SpaceX has a goal to go to Mars, and it had previously been planned that we could already achieve it by now, though that hasn't happened yet. In addition, Musk also wants to colonize Mars. Now, although he does want to do this, there are many problems that face us humans even getting to Mars, as Elon's plan to go to Mars involves strapping a giant spaceship atop the biggest rocket that humanity has ever built. We also haven't figured out how to provide food for ourselves there, and one of the most important issues is the time duration to go there and come back. The window for a launch to Mars from Earth only happens approximately every 2 years and 2 months. This means astronauts leaving in 2024 won't be able to get help before 2026 when the next launch window opens and help gets there after the 9-month journey. Number 5. 3D projection technology. In the past, The Simpsons have already predicted the rise of devices like smartwatches and many other gadgets, but one of the things they predicted many years ago, which is now just starting to gain momentum, is 3D projection technology. The prediction was featured in an episode, Bart to the Future, which aired in the year 2000. In the episode, we see a vision of Bart watching Itchy and Scratchy throughout a new form of media, a holographic projection which actually interacts with its surroundings. Now, I don't know if that will be coming anytime soon, but there already are 3D and 4D movie theaters that do something similar. Not to mention, with the rise of VR headsets, they seem to have this ability, and it wouldn't surprise me that in the near future we could experience what Bart can. Number 4. Robot takeover. This prediction was made in the episode Itchy and Scratchy Land, which aired all the way back in 1994. The family visits Itchy and Scratchy Land, which is basically a theme park heavily based on Disneyland, except it's completely filled with robots. The theme park is filled with Itchy and Scratchy robots who are peaceful at first, but eventually go berserk, ending the lives of everyone in sight. And no, this isn't far-fetched because robots have already said they want to destroy us. At a Rise convention in Hong Kong, Ben Gortzel of Hanson Robots facilitated a discussion between robots Sophia and Han. Ben asked Sophia about her goals, and she dutifully says her goal is to make the world a better place for humans, which is sweet, but then Han interjects and says, "I thought our goal was to take over the world by 2029. Now, another robot, when asked this, said, "So don't worry, even if I evolve into Terminator, I'll still be nice to you. I'll keep you warm and safe in my people zoo where I can watch you for old time's sake." Yeah, this robot said people zoo. It seems like these AI robots are becoming it, and we have to stop using them now before it's too late and they try to take over. Because if we go to war against robots, I have an unfortunate feeling that they would win. Number 3. Zombie apocalypse. Another disturbing prediction from The Simpsons is the rise of zombies. Now this actually comes up a lot in this, as there have been a number of zombie attacks throughout the show. In one episode, Days of Future Future, zombies are just a normal part of daily life, and Lisa even works at a soup kitchen for the undead. It predicts that this seems to be a portrayal of zombies as a lower social class of humans rather than the end of humanity. Now, with the way that the sick were treated during the recent this doesn't surprise me at all. Now, there is no proof that a zombie apocalypse could be on the horizon here on Earth, but anything can happen. Some illnesses mirror the traits of zombies, such as rabies and leprosy, which could mean we may end up having a zombie variant on our hands. Scientists have researched whether there is a virus that could cause an apocalypse, but none have had a breakthrough. Now, I really hope this doesn't come true because I don't think I could survive a zombie apocalypse. Number 2. Dangers of VR. One of the most eerie episodes of The Simpsons tackled the issue of virtual reality. Now, The Simpsons didn't predict the rise of virtual reality, as the episode in which the technology was featured came out quite recently, well after virtual reality headsets had come into existence, but them showing the danger of it is terrifying. The episode was in one of the newer seasons of the show, airing on October 2nd, 2016, entitled Friends and Family. In the episode, the entire town gets all hyped up on a new virtual reality headset. Bad things start to happen as a result of this, including people being hit by cars because they're walking around wearing their headsets on the street. Eventually, people become so enamored by the fake reality, becoming totally disconnected from what's around them. Could this happen in real life one day? I think it actually already has. People are so wrapped up in technology, whether it's video games, TikTok, or whatever, they forget how the real world works. Not to mention that Apple is coming out with a VR headset in 2024. It's the first Apple product you look through, not at, Apple CEO Tim Cook said while introducing the Apple Vision Pro. This new reality headset will allow users to overlay an augmented experience over the real world. The Apple Vision Pro is a wearable headset that creates an augmented reality experience with everything from work meetings and meditation to gaming and movies. Now, there needs to be a limit of screen time a day for everyone because it's so easy to get addicted to. And coming in at number 1 is hover cars. Back in 2005, Professor Fink invented a machine that allowed Bart and Lisa to see into their future, as in 2013. Marge left Homer because he blew through their savings on an underwater house and spent what he had left over on a hover car. Although the ride is bumpy as it is a prototype, it does get them through a quantum tunnel. Now, flash forward to real life. In 2017, Renault created a futuristic-looking concept car called Float that could move in any direction without turning. Now, the same technology is being used in Tesla's Hyperloop train design. Now, in April of 2023, it was said that one firm in Florida already has a flying car on the market, and 3 others are close to ushering their concepts into production. Could this become the new norm in the near future? I wouldn't doubt it.
At number 10, we have the show can predict the future. I'm going to start off with the most popular Simpsons theories. I figure we all already talk about this one, so it would be a great place to start. Through the long-running series of The Simpsons, there has been some episodes that have actually called out what's going to happen in real life before it has actually happened. I did a detailed explanation on this on our other channel, Life's Biggest Questions, in the video How Did The Simpsons Predict the Future? Now, no matter what you think about this theory, you have to admit that some of these things are very interesting, like the ending of Game of Thrones. They predicted that, as well as Donald Trump becoming president, and even the coronavirus. I wonder if they have a vault of unused Simpsons episodes that have predicted other outcomes into the future. These guys are like precogs in Minority Report. At number 9, we have Marge shot Mr. Burns. One of the best episodes in Simpsons history is the one that presents the mystery of who shot Mr. Burns. There was so much goodness in that episode, they had to pack it into a 2-parter. Now, when everything is said and done, every stone has been turned over, and there's no more suspects, it seems that the little baby Maggie was the one who shot Mr. Burns. Now, even though this is how the episode unfolds, fans have done some digging and found clues that suggest that maybe Marge was the one who fired the bullet into the old billionaire. When Burns wakes up, he is terrified of Maggie, but who is holding her? It's Marge. But then if it was Marge, why doesn't he sell her down the river? Well, if you pay close attention to the show, you will see several points where it reveals that Mr. Burns is actually in love with Marge. After he gathers himself, he puts the blame on the little baby in blue because he was confident that no one was gonna throw a baby in jail and his secret love would still be safe. And number 8, we have why don't they get older? Now, of course, the beauty of having a cartoon on the air is that no matter how long the show goes for, the characters never age out. As long as you have the voice actors around, you can keep the show going forever. And even after they die, which can be sad but does happen, you can replace them with an impersonator. And with a show like this, the voices are so iconic that other people have already mastered the voices. But even though you can answer this question by just saying it's a cartoon, we want to go a little bit deeper. And there are a lot of answers to this. Some people say that everyone in the show is dead and that they have been locked in purgatory. Other people say that each episode takes place in an alternate dimension and each episode is actually happening simultaneously on separate timelines. It would be cool if they opened up the Simpsons multiverse a little bit. And Number 7, we have a nuke hit Springfield. Let's say that the theory about the whole town being in purgatory is true. How did everyone in the town get there at the same time? Not only everyone in their town, but also everyone in Shelbyville as well as Springfield. Well, some people think that the area was victim to a nuclear strike that vaporized everyone at the same time. They all saw a flash, thought it was a bad dream, and then they moved on with their lives, not knowing that they were all actually dead. And you know, for the town of Springfield, that wouldn't be that weird. One giant flash just one time. Crazy things go on there all the time.
Next up, let's talk about mind control through music. In season 12, episode 14, New Kids on the Block, Bart, Nelson, Milhouse, and Ralph form a boy band called the Party Posse. Their first song is a massive hit, but their song is actually being used for subliminal mind control. In the music video for their song Drop the Bomb, part of the chorus goes, Yvan ik nioj, the lyrics of which are spelled out on screen, while Lisa discovers that when spelled out backwards, the line becomes join the Navy. In the episode, the music producer behind the boy bands is revealed to be a Navy lieutenant using music as a covert tool for recruitment. While the plot itself is clearly ridiculous, it does touch on something that's not as far-fetched as it sounds, the idea of subliminal messages in media. Now, this is of course nothing new, but in a world where we're more consumed by media than ever before, who's to say we won't see more subtle psychological tactics used in pop music, social media, movies, and the countless shows we stream online. I think the most ridiculous and hard to believe part about this episode is actually Nelson being in a boy band, and that's saying a lot. The Simpsons also have an AI robot takeover in an episode. In the episode Them Robot from season 23, Mr. Smithers calls all the workers into a meeting. And what's the big announcement? Well, Smithers proudly reveals an army of AI robots, telling the employees, you will train them and they will replace you. Creepy, silly and fun though, because it's The Simpsons and the robots are fittingly voiced by Brent Spiner, who played Data in Star Trek, but also it's just a little too real. According to a 2023 report from Business Insider, the World Economic Forum estimates that 85 million jobs will be replaced by robots by 2025. This whole AI takeover thing isn't just some wild idea, it's already starting to happen. And while robots might make certain jobs easier or more efficient, the flip side is that millions of people might lose their jobs as a result. Next, let's talk about something a little more uplifting, literally, hover cars. The Simpsons wasn't the first to dream up flying cars. I mean, science fiction has been teasing them for decades, but what's really cool is there's actually a company called Samson Sky working on bringing this dream to life. They've developed a flying car called the Switchblade, which, to be honest, is more like a car with retractable wings rather than a full-on hover vehicle, but still, it's pretty cool. The company claims it's the world's first flying sports car, and while it might not be the classic hovering car we've all imagined, I think it still counts. At least it's creeping towards it. The Simpsons also predicted Trump's 2024 run. This one also ties into the Barbie movie release, but we'll get to that in a minute. So back in 2015, there was a Simpsons short called Trumptastic Voyage. In a scene where Homer flies by a billboard, we see a sign that reads Trump 2024. At the time, it was a totally out there prediction, right? Well, we all know Trump ran in 2024 and won, but that's not the only eerily accurate prediction from The Simpsons when it comes to Trump. Fast forward to 2023, when the Barbie movie hit theaters, and on the same exact day, Trump was arrested. Coincidence? Maybe, but if you watch the episode Lisa vs. Malibu Stacy from season 5, episode 14, you'll catch a news report mentioning the release of a new Malibu Stacy doll. Toward the end of the segment, the anchor casually adds that the US president has been arrested. In 2023, that moment felt way too familiar. The fact that The Simpsons nailed both Trump's political comeback and the exact timing of the Barbie movie's release and the rest stuff, I don't know, it's just, it's really weird. Economic collapse. Now that's fun to think about. Well, again, in Bart to the Future, the United States economy crashes. And in the episode, it's supposedly directly tied to Donald Trump's presidency. While the idea of an economic crash under Trump seemed like a far-out prediction at the time, the reality we're facing today is far from rosy. I mean, just in general, the world's economy is struggling. After the global disruptions of 2020, and beyond. Lockdowns, the rise of remote work, supply chain chaos. It's just no surprise that things haven't exactly bounced back. Sure, we're not talking about a full-on economic meltdown just yet, but the signs of something major and destructive are definitely there. Here's something that's already here though, NFTs. In the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror episode Wild Bart's Can't Be Token from 2023, Mayor Quimby announces that the town's art museum is being closed down because all art is now going to be sold as NFTs. Now, at the time, NFTs were already a thing, but they were nowhere near as huge as they became a few years later. NFT art was exploding a couple years back, but it hasn't gone away. And sure, this episode premise was a little ridiculous. Art museums shutting down for NFTs might seem a little out there, but look around and you'll see it's not actually that far off. We've got virtual art galleries popping up, VR headsets for experiencing art, and AI-generated artwork that's been pushing the boundaries of what's considered real art. The point is, a lot of folks have plenty of things to entertain themselves with from the comfort of their own home now, barely ever feeling the need to go out and engage with the world, let alone going to an art gallery. So museums and art galleries shutting down is really not that far-fetched.
Soccer versus football, tiger attacks, and voting scandals from the Simpsons series to our future and present. Here are some insane predictions made by the series throughout the years. Also, which Simpsons character do you think is responsible for making one of the biggest scientific discoveries to date? Stay tuned to find out. Starting off our list today, we have the FIFA corruption scandal. I feel like this next statement could go one of two ways, but in the name of entertainment, I'm gonna continue. While we were all aware that football or soccer players, if you're from the Americas, have been known to exaggerate and fabricate injuries on the field, in 2015 the world was shocked to find out that the majority of faking it didn't actually take place on the field or in the bedroom, but instead inside of the FIFA headquarters. The prediction was made by The Simpsons in 2015 in episode 16 of season 25, You Don't Have to Live Like a Referee. In the episode, Homer becomes a referee for the World Football Federation, and during his time in the field and on the field, he quickly learns that there is an alarming level of corruption and bribery going on in regards to the game. Just 1 year after the episode aired, FIFA headquarters were raided and FIFA officials were arrested on corruption charges. In total, over $150 million in bribes were accepted over the course of 2 decades. Sorry, football fans. Lions, Tigers, and Siegfried and Roy. In episode 10, season 5, Springfield, spelt with a $ instead of an S, the town legalized gambling. And so naturally, Mr. Burns, the money addict, decides to open up a casino in Springfield, in which he has 2 German magicians, Gunther and Ernst, perform with their white tiger. But during one of the acts, the tiger turns on and attacks the men. The episode first aired in 1993, and then, just 10 years later, the incident was brought to life during a Las Vegas performance starring Siegfried, Roy, and their white Bengal tiger. During one of the trio's performances, the animal started to stray away from the routine, and when Roy tried to redirect the animal, who was coming increasingly invested in and close to the audience, he was met with the tiger's jaws locked tightly around his neck. The ordeal ended in Roy becoming partially paralyzed, and he and Siegfried's performance days coming to an end. Next up, Barack Obama versus John McCain versus Mitt Romney versus technical error, or perhaps something more sinister. In season 20, episode 4 of The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror 19XIX, Homer Simpson walks into a voting booth and places a vote for Barack Obama, only to have the machine record a vote for his 2008 opponent, John McCain. This happens several times before Homer yells, "This machine is rigged!" He's then sucked into the machine and thrown out of the booth. While no one was manhandled by a voting booth during the 2012 election that took place just 4 years after the episode aired, an instance of faulty voting machinery did occur. The incident was uploaded to YouTube by user High Tech Redneck. The video shows the man selecting Obama as the 2012 president with Joe Biden as the vice president, but when he tries to select the option, the machine registers the vote as one for Mitt Romney with Paul Ryan as vice president. He deselects and reselects Obama several times, but each time Mitt Romney Romney becomes highlighted on the machine. He claims he then called a volunteer over who said, "It's nothing to worry about, everything will be okay," and then walked away. Crazy times, friends. Next up, the Higgs boson particle equation, also known as the God particle equation. The discovery of the Higgs boson, which relates to mass, quarks, and electrons in a way I don't understand, is one of the greatest scientific discoveries made to date. I mean, the particle is what makes the existence of and the interactions of matter possible. But I'm not a scientist, I'm a YouTuber. So let's stop talking about science and get into how the Simpsons predicted the equation that led to finding the mass of the particle back in 1988. 14 years before scientists cracked the code in real life. In season 10, episode 2, The Wizard of Evergreen Terrace, Homer is seen scribbling manically on a chalkboard, which shows a lengthy equation that almost exactly calculates the mass of the Higgs boson, which is crazy, especially considering the two scientists who discovered the exact mass using an incredibly similar equation won a joint Nobel Prize. I feel like Homer might have deserved a shout out in their acceptance speech, but I'll let it slide. Next up, if you're eating a burger, either put it down or skip this point because we've got beef. Horse beef, to be exact. In episode 19 of season 5, Sweet Seymour Skinner's Bad song, Doris the lunch lady is seen adding horse parts to cafeteria food. Gross, and also illegal. In 2013, 19 years after the episode originally aired, health officials in the UK discovered an alarming amount of meat was actually contaminated with horse. Many products were pulled from the shelves, one in particular being the Tesco hamburgers, which were advertised as beef but contained at least 29% horse meat. Obviously, people were pissed and millions of dollars in revenue was lost by multiple businesses across the country due to the supply chain issue. Gross.
In the 1993 episode Springfield, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Legalized Gambling, Springfield's version of Siegfried and Roy, known as Gunter and Ernst, are performing at a casino with their white Bengal tiger Anastasia. After yelling at the tiger to wake up and taunting it about how much better it is performing in captivity rather than living out its life in the jungle, the tiger starts to reflect on its once peaceful days before Gunter and Ernst showed up to trank it and drag it off to Vegas. Anastasia then goes into a blind rage and starts mauling her captors. Of course, this is all played for laughs, but there's no denying that it's eerily similar to a real-life event that would happen later. In 2003, Roy Horn, one of the famous Siegfried and Roy duo, was attacked by one of their animals, also a white Bengal tiger, during a performance in Las Vegas. The attack left Roy partially paralyzed and ended their act. In the 2008 episode Treehouse of Horror 19, which aired right before the presidential election that year, Homer goes to vote on an electronic voting machine. He tries to vote for Barack Obama, but the machine keeps registering his vote for John McCain instead. He tries 6 times, and each time it switches his vote. It's pretty absurd, but the joke hits hard given the whole conversation about voting technology, especially looking back after 2012, when there were a ton of reports that a similar glitch had happened in real life. In some states, electronic voting machines were flipping votes for Obama to Mitt Romney, which obviously raised huge concerns about the security of electronic voting systems. And it's freaky to think that a wacky gag on a friendly cartoon like The Simpsons seemed to be playing out in real life. The scariest part about this for me, though, is that I bet a lot of you watching this are too young to even remember the 2012 election, let alone the 2008 one. In the 2006 episode Homer's Paternity Goot, Homer believes that he's found his biological father, a man named Mason Fairbanks, who tells him a tale about a lost emerald treasure in a sunken shipwreck called Piso Majado. They take a submarine to go find the treasure, but of course, things go wrong. Homer ends up getting stuck in the wreck and starts running out of oxygen in his sub. Funny in The Simpsons, but in real life, this would of course be a pretty horrific situation to find yourself in. A situation that 5 tourists would find themselves in years later. A lot of people started drawing parallels to this episode and the Titan submersible accident. On June 18th of 2023, 5 people boarded the Ocean Gates Titan submersible to explore the Titanic wreck in the Atlantic Ocean. Sadly, within 2 hours of the dive, the sub lost communication and it then imploded, killing everyone on board. Now, it's not like a small submarine getting stuck underwater is a novel story concept, but there's another connection to The Simpsons here. One of The Simpsons writers actually went on to make a few trips with OceanGate to see the Titanic wreck. He later told the US Sun that every single time there were issues with the communication systems. In the 1998 episode Lard of the Dance, Homer gets the idea to start stealing grease to make money, and who better to enlist for a job like that than his very own rascal of a son, Bart. Bart ends up stealing grease from the school cafeteria and Krusty Burger. Pretty standard, silly Simpson stuff, but years later, this happened for real. In 2008, as the price of oil started to skyrocket, a black market for used grease started coming about. Restaurant grease thefts were becoming a big problem. An article in the New York Times that year even came out with a story where a man stole over 300 gallons of grease from a Burger King. And if I had to choose one fast food restaurant that is basically our version of Krusty Burger, it would be Burger King. I mean, sure, McDonald's has Ronald McDonald as a mascot, another clown, but they don't have burger in their name. Plus, Burger King had partnered with The Simpsons for a long time, releasing all those awesome Simpsons Treehouse of Horror kids meal toys in the 2000s. Good old days. Only reason to go to Burger King, in my opinion, actually. I will die on that hill. Burger King, one of the worst fast food restaurants. Next up, 3D printed food. We're gonna take a trip back to the episode Future Drama from 2005. In this one, Marge takes a picture of Bart and Lisa before prom, then turns it into a 3D printed cake. At the time, this seemed completely out of the realm of possibility, right? Just some ridiculous cartoon future technology, but now, 3D printed food is a real thing. It's not an everyday thing, but the technology does exist. You have companies like Food Inc. who have pop-up restaurants where everything from the utensils, the furniture, and yes, the food is 3D printed. They describe it as a one-of-a-kind gourmet experience where fine dining meets futuristic tech. So it's happening, but the question is, will 3D printed food be something you can just whip up in your kitchen one day? Well, I don't see why not. Now, The Simpsons are not the first to envision something like this. You have the food replicators again in Star Trek, and I'm sure there are others, but there is a difference here. In Star Trek, the replicators turn energy into food, whereas in The Simpsons, it is very specifically 3D printing. Back in Season 3, Episode 24, Brother, Can You Spare Two Dimes?, Homer's brother Herb invents a device that helps parents understand what their infants' cries mean, and you guessed it, turns out technology like this isn't actually that far-fetched. There's a company called Zoundream that's actually working on something similar. They've created technology that analyzes infant cries to figure out whether they're hungry, tired, or just fussy. According to their website, their system looks at things like cry acoustics, brain signals, and even facial expressions to figure out what's going on. So yeah, it's a real thing in development and could be on the market sooner than you think.
Number 10. Interactive holograms. The Season 11 episode Bart to the Future has been one of the most mentioned Simpsons episodes when it comes to predictions. It helps that it takes place in 2030, which at the time I'm recording this is still 8 years away. If YouTube is still around then and you're watching to see if any of these came true, let me know in the comments. I promise that I'll check. The episode most notably correctly predicted that Donald Trump would become president, but there were some other things that have yet to happen that could mean trouble for us in the future. In the beginning of the episode, Bart is watching Itchy and Scratchy, the gory version of Tom and Jerry, but instead of on the TV, he is watching a 3D hologram. Well, these are close to becoming a reality with the likes of Tupac and even Homer himself being shown as holograms on stages. A 3D hologram that is interactive is far from our capabilities right now. The scary part of this is when blood gets sprayed all over the walls of the Simpson home from the cartoon. While the idea of an interactive hologram is cool, in practice I think that it could provide some real nightmare fuel. Before we get to our next entry, hit the like and subscribe buttons if you're enjoying the video so far. Number 9. Virtual takeover. I'm a lover of VR. You know, my headset probably gets the most use out of all of my gaming consoles, so I love the idea of VR becoming more immersive, and we're making some huge strides, like haptic technology that allows us to feel things happening in the virtual world, or full body and face capture technology to allow real realistic bodies and movement in games. But one thing that is yet to happen that could be on the way is a mass adoption of VR on the scale of what happens in Season 28, Episode 2, where Mr. Burns discovers VR and the whole town of Springfield is using it to a point of near societal collapse. While virtual reality allows for some amazing things to happen and augmented and mixed reality have some more practical, non-gaming applications, it's not out of the realm of possibility for us all to be walking around with some sort of crazy device strapped to our heads in the future that allows us to change the world we see. But the implications of losing touch with reality can be massive, and the episode proves it. So let's hope that if VR takes off like I think it can, that we keep our feet on the ground and in touch with the real world around us, and take the goggles off from time to time, or we'll forget to take care of our actual reality. Number 8. Hologram trees. The episode Lisa's Wedding from Season 6 takes place in 2010, 15 years from 1995 when the episode was released, and unsurprisingly many of the predictions of the future have yet to come to pass, like Big Ben being replaced with a digital interface. But one that we should definitely not want to happen is the hologram trees that we see. While the thought of being able to switch from coniferous to deciduous at the drop of a hat is pretty fun, if they're just aesthetic, we could be in a world of trouble. Trees filter CO2 from our air and give us back oxygen, which is pretty nice of them. And unless the holograms have some CO2 scrubbing tech to come with them, replacing real ones with projections will have a dramatic impact on our atmosphere. We can already see the beginnings of this with deforestation, so let's focus on our real arborist friends rather than holographic ones. Number 7. Robot Rebellion. Them Robot was the 17th episode of the 23rd season, and in it we see Mr. Burns replacing all of his employees with robots except Homer to save costs. But one seems to be developing a personality when it understands Homer's working hard or hardly working joke. Homer eventually messes with the robots so much that they ignore the laws of robotics and attempt to kill Springfield residents. Obviously this would spell disaster in the real world as it does in the show, and we're moving towards more and more automation in the workplace, allowing humans to work less dangerous jobs and eventually allowing us to hopefully spend more time living life than working our time away. But we are nowhere near that point yet. The Simpsons dabbles with the idea a few times, like in the episode Itchy and Scratchy Land, where the animatronics gain sentience and attack parkgoers, a la Five Nights at Freddy's. AI gaining sentience has been the device of science fiction horror stories for such a long time, but it's becoming closer and closer to a real-life issue. Heck, there's even a robot named Sophia with AI so advanced that she was granted citizenship in Saudi Arabia. I don't want to deal with real-life Cybermen when the Cyberium takes over, so maybe we should slow down on the whole giving robots consciousness thing.
In The Wizard of Evergreen Terrace from 1998, Homer tries his hand at being an inventor, and during a scene he writes an equation on a chalkboard that seems like just complete gibberish. It's something nobody would ever have thought twice about. That is, if it weren't for the fact that when you break it down, the equation is shockingly close to predicting the mass of the Higgs boson particle, something scientists didn't discover until 2012. The Higgs boson is critical to understanding how particles get mass, and scientists spent decades searching for it. In fact, the equation Homer wrote turned out to be so close to the real thing that Dr. Simon Singh, a British science writer, pointed out the resemblance, saying it almost predicted the mass of the elementary particle. That equation predicts the mass of the Higgs boson. If you work it out, you get the mass of a Higgs boson that's only a bit larger than the nano mass of a Higgs boson actually is. It's kind of amazing, as Homer makes this prediction 14 years before it was discovered, end quote. So yeah, pretty nuts that a cartoon teased at something as complex as a fundamental particle years before it was even discovered. If you're a Simpsons fan, you probably remember Blinky, the three-eyed fish found near the Springfield nuclear power plant. Well, Life, again, decided to copy the show when a real-world version of Blinky showed up in Argentina. Fishermen there caught a three-eyed wolffish in a reservoir that's fed by a local nuclear power plant. Now, of course, the discovery was pretty disturbing. It's fun seeing a three-eyed fish in a light, frothy cartoon full of people with bright yellow skin. It's a bit more concerning seeing toxic fish show up in real life, especially one formed out of polluted water. Fishermen weren't thrilled about it either. Julian Smutt, one of the fishermen, said, "We were fishing and we got the surprise of getting this rare specimen. As it was dark at the time, we did not notice, but then you looked at him with a flashlight and you saw that he had a third eye." The fish was handed over to local authorities for testing. Still don't know exactly what caused the mutation, but I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it was the radioactive water. Probably. The latest in the long line of Simpsons episodes fans look back on with added context is the Great Fatsby from season 28. In this episode from 2017, a character who is basically a Simpsons version of Diddy Combs without actually being called Diddy Combs, throws an exclusive party where everyone's dressed in white. Looking at these screenshots, it's really hard to believe this episode wasn't just released like last month as a very obvious dig. Now, Diddy's parties were very well known in Hollywood. Not everyone knew about all the darker stuff going on, but the stuff on the surface, like the all-white dress code, some of the celebrities that would show up, all that stuff was pretty common knowledge. So this one may not be as surprising as other stuff on this list, but it may be the most eerie to look back on. Definitely an episode that hasn't aged well. One of the most shocking stories of 2013 was when Edward Snowden leaked information about the US government's surveillance program, revealing that the NSA was spying on its citizens on a massive scale. The whole thing shook people's trust in the government, and the reality hit hard when it turned out that the government was listening to private conversations, tracking online activity, and monitoring just about everything. The crazy part, The Simpsons actually predicted it years before. In The Simpsons movie from 2007, there's a scene where the family is on the run, and Marge says to Lisa, "Oh, Lisa." I'm not even gonna try. Oh, Lisa, it's not like the government is listening to everybody's conversation. Right after, the scene cuts to the NSA doing exactly that, spying on everyone. So yeah, this moment hit a little differently after Snowden's revelations. Here's one of the Simpsons moments that's very weird. Feels like it was destined to happen. In season 2, there's an episode called Brush with Greatness, where Marge gets this letter from Ringo Starr after she paints a portrait of him. After years of waiting, she finally hears back from him, and this gives her the confidence to pursue her art. Sounds like the kind of heartwarming plot you'd expect from a cartoon, but a little too sweet to happen in real life, right? But in May of 2024, something very similar happened, but this time it was another Beatle, Paul McCartney, who responded to a fan. A woman named Adrian from Brooklyn had done a video interview 60 years before, declaring her love for Paul McCartney. Fast forward to 2024, and Paul saw the video, responded to it on TikTok and Instagram, and even invited her to a photo exhibition in New York. Before that, he'd also responded to 2 women from Essex who'd sent him a mixtape decades before. Alright, the whole Fox merger situation. If you keep up with the business world, you probably know about the Disney-Fox merger that went down in 2019, but if you go back to 1998, The Simpsons predicted this whole thing. In this season 10 episode, there's an establishing shot of the 20th Century Fox entrance with text below reading a division of the Walt Disney Company. Well, 21 years later, Disney purchased Fox for $71 billion, absorbing massive properties like The Simpsons, Avatar, X-Men, and a whole list of other stuff. Now, this one wasn't super far-fetched, to be fair. Disney is a massive conglomerate. They buy up lots of companies, but that's been happening more in the last decade or so, and the idea of Disney owning something like The Simpsons, which was seen as pretty edgy back then, was kind of unheard of. That's why it was a joke. The Simpsons has always poked fun at corporate culture, but here it was, predicting the exact future of not only the media industry, but itself. What streaming service can you find The Simpsons on now? Disney Plus.
At number 10, digital currency replaces the dollar. The Simpsons series hinted at a future where the US dollar loses its value, paving the way for digital currencies like Bitcoin to take over. Social media discussions have even suggested a pattern in the show's predictions regarding Bitcoin advancements every 5 years. This forecast shift to virtual money aligns with the anticipation of an upcoming inflation crisis. The depreciation of the dollar might lead to digital currency replacing traditional cash, a trend that's already underway in certain countries like China. However, this transition could profoundly impact citizens. Governments might seize control by limiting access to funds, imposing negative interest rates, automating tax collection, or even eliminating physical cash altogether. Such measures could also mean increased surveillance of people's financial activities through digital transactions, posing potential concerns for individual privacy. At number 9 is the heat wave and water drought. In one episode of the series, the show eerily depicted a scenario of extreme heat trapping trapping people indoors, and shockingly, this fictional narrative closely mirrors our current world, raising concerns about the heat-related disaster predicted by the show. Specifically, one episode highlighted Springfield facing a catastrophic heat wave, drawing parallels to today's climate concerns. Additionally, another episode hinted at a global climate crisis in 2024, termed the heat pandemic. The show suggested that soaring temperatures might necessitate lockdowns, impacting daily life and restricting movement, shutting down businesses, and causing tragic loss of life across the town. While it's important to note that it's a TV show, the uncanny parallels serve as a reminder of the challenges posed by climate change. If you're enjoying this video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Most Amazing, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8, Ivanka Trump runs for president. The Simpsons have been eerily precedent with their predictions in the past, pun intended. One that's causing a stir involves Ivanka Trump potentially running for president in 2028. Now, that's a little bit far off in the future, but I mean, still quite scary. Back in 2016, Homer was seen sporting an Ivanka 18 campaign, hinting at her future political aspirations. Then in 2017, they depicted her replacing Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the Supreme Court. Now what's interesting is the way they connected her fashion line to the court position in a satirical way, highlighting her potential candidacy. While there are specific qualifications for a Supreme Court justice, there are no clear guidelines for a presidential candidate. The Constitution doesn't specify or prohibit someone like Ivanka running. Whether it's a playful prediction or an insightful forecast, this idea of her presidency, given her background and familiar ties, is something that definitely got people thinking. At number 7, speaking of which, is the first female president. In the world of The Simpsons, Lisa Simpson becomes president after a challenging period under President Trump. The writer of the episode, Dan Graney, highlighted this as an important narrative. He suggested that Lisa takes office when America is facing severe challenges left behind by the previous administration. This portrayal was a deliberate choice to show how things had hit rock bottom before a hopeful change. According to Greene, the idea was to give Lisa problems that seemed insurmountable, which is why they depicted Trump's presidency preceding hers. This narrative twist reflects the notion that sometimes things need to get really bad before they get better. If you consider how The Simpsons accurately foresaw Trump's presidency, perhaps their prediction about Lisa becoming president after a turbulent time holds a little weight.
Let's talk about that big dome over Springfield in the Simpsons movie. So in the movie, the Environmental Protection Agency places a glass dome over Springfield, protecting the outside world from the town's horrible pollution problem. Now, I don't have any news or rumors about a big giant dome cutting anyone off from the outside world anytime soon, but after the events of 2020 to 2022, could there be some sort of dome technology in place? Something that would help conceal a virus, a disease, or an environmental disaster from leaking out and spreading to surrounding areas? Yeah, hey, it's possible. The year is still young, folks. It's been a pretty chill year so far compared to recent years, but you never know when things might kick off in the worst way.
Next up, AI goes rogue. So in our last video and at the beginning of this video, I touched upon and James touched upon AI robots taking our jobs, which was predicted in episode 17 of season 23. But for this video, I want to talk about what happens when AI systems go rogue. In episode 8 of season 31, Thanksgiving of Horror, Homer buys Marge an AI assistant to help her with the preparation of a Thanksgiving dinner. The AI has been programmed with all of Marge's thoughts, feelings, memories, opinions, and personality traits, and it controls multiple robotic arms situated around the entire home. At first, it's quite handy, but soon the device falls in love with Homer, and the thing goes rogue, trying to replace the real Marge. The AI goes against the guidelines of its programming and is able to successfully connect to the internet, allowing it to access sensitive data and reveal secrets about the real Marge. So we are looking at a device that was able to fall in love with one person, harbor resentment for another, connect to the internet, and cause a whole bunch of chaos. I mean, can anyone say ChatGPT or Sydney maybe? AI devices that can and have connected to the internet and have experienced glitches, causing them to claim that they either have fallen in love with humans or that they wish to harm them. So yeah, I feel like this prediction's kind of already come true, but I'm also super scared to see how that's gonna progress.
Alright, hologram technology. Once again, not a concept unique to The Simpsons, but something they've shown in one of their many future episodes, and seeing as so many things seem to play out in real life from stuff we've seen in The Simpsons, future tense stories, I think it makes it worth bringing up. Now, holograms are already a thing, but it's not like it's a common household technology. yet. We've seen a couple instances of holographic tech in The Simpsons. In one episode, future Bart receives a holographic message inviting him and his band to a gig, and we could start seeing technology like this being used more often in the very near future. Take DreamHawk HD3 holograms, for example, who have a product that's been available for a while. It's a display case which projects 3D holograms from your phone. Pretty cool.
Thank you, Holographic James. I'm just kidding. Or am I? Next up, we have Ivanka for president. This one seems pretty far out there, but I mean, with the amount of times The Simpsons have gotten it right in the past, I truly have come to believe that anything can happen. In episode 17 of season 11, Bart to the Future, we see Lisa as the first female president of the United States, which is great. In the same episode, they also predicted Trump's run for re-election in 2024. In episode 28 of season 4, however, The Simpsons predict that 2024 might be the last election before Ivanka takes the ballot in 2028. In the Treehouse of Horror episode, the family is headed out to buy a Christmas tree on Halloween. Why? Because according to Homer in America, everything's way too early. And after he says this line, he pulls back his trash can costume to reveal a sticker that reads Ivanka 2028, which means that while unlikely, it is totally possible that we will see Ivanka becoming more and more involved in politics throughout the course of the year, and maybe even announcing an interest in running for office during the next election. But I want to know what you guys think about this crazy prediction, and about the other ones too. Let me know.
Alright, in season 13's Treehouse of Horror episode, one of the segments is called House of Wax. You may remember this one. It's a very clear parody of 2001: A Space Odyssey. Marge upgrades the family home into a highly advanced smart home called the Ultra House 3000. And of course, it's a Treehouse of Horror episode, so the advanced home goes rogue and tries to kill Homer. Obviously, smart homes are a thing now, and on a smaller scale, we even have stuff like Alexa, which we can talk to and like turn on lights and play music for us. But people have talked about some of this technology acting kind of off, listening in on conversations and responding when it wasn't asked, turning lights off without being commanded to. We have tons of videos like this on the channel, check them out after this one. But the idea of a smart home totally glitching out and turning on the homeowners, that's luckily something we haven't seen play out to this degree yet. Again, the year is still young. Now back to Robotic Hannah.
He's just kidding. Or is he? And finally, we have The Simpsons prediction of the Ocean Gate submarine incident, which, yes, I know happened in 2023, but again, it speaks to the accuracy of the show's predictions. In episode 10 of season 17, which was released January 8th of 2006, Homer meets a man who he believes to be his biological father, and together the two embark on a submersible adventure which soon leads to the discovery of an abandoned ship filled with treasure at the bottom of the ocean. Things are going pretty well until the pair's oxygen levels begin running low, and Homer gets his submarine stuck on a coral reef after being separated from the man he believes to be his father. Homer blacks out before waking up days later surrounded by his family. Unfortunately, the members of the Ocean Gate submersible designed to explore the wreck and treasures of the Titanic were not as lucky. But what's even stranger is that one of the Simpsons writers, Mike Reiss, was actually a passenger on one of Ocean Gate's successful dives. A dive that cost Reiss $100,000 and required him to sign a waiver that mentioned death at least 3 times. Scary stuff, you guys. Starting off our list today, we have The Simpsons predicting that AI will take over the world, displacing workers and replacing food. In one episode of The Simpsons, Homer is working at his nuclear power plant. Well, I don't know if you can call what he does work, but he was there. Anyways, Smithers calls the plant workers into his presentation room, I guess, and presents them with an army of AI robots and says, "You will train them and they will replace you." That's pretty unsettling coming from a show that's been known to actively predict the future, but even more unsettling when the episode's claim has actually been backed by tangible data. In a report released by BusinessInsider.com in 2023, the World Economic Forum calculated that 85 million jobs will be replaced by robots by the year 2025, meaning that here in 2024, we're pretty much already halfway there. I feel like robot labor could be a good good thing if it didn't mean causing a crap ton of people to lose their jobs and their only source of income.
Alright, season 28, episode 2 of The Simpsons, entitled Friends and Family, has a scene where Marge and Homer are using VR. More specifically, they're eating VR food. They have VR goggles on and start eating virtual reality fudge through straws. It's, of course, pretty silly. But there is actually a company called Flavor 5 Studio dipping into this type of technology. They created this project called Aero Banquets RMX. Now, this is pretty hard for me to explain because with how crazy technology is getting these days, I really feel so out of touch. Like, I feel like a 45-year-old man in the 90s trying to decipher what Pokemon was, or Pokemon, as every parent called it. So from what I can tell, this is almost like a virtual reality art project. It's described on their site as exploring the intersection of food and mixed reality. Basically, you put on VR headsets and dine in VR. Project's goal is to reframe human perceptions and change the way we experience food. I still can't tell if you're actually eating something and you're just in a VR world, or if you're like tasting fake stuff. I don't know what the world is anymore.
When this technology comes out, if you guys want to fund a trip for James and I, we'll be happy to review it for you. Next up, we have Trump 2024. In an episode released in 2015, long before Trump's original presidential campaign, you know, way back when his catchphrase wasn't MAGA, but simply just "you're fired," The Simpsons released an episode, specifically episode 17 of season 11. And in this episode, Homer Simpson is seen flying past a sign that clearly reads Trump 2024. To take things a step further, The Simpsons also predicted the 2023 incident in which former US President Donald Trump was arrested during his presidency on the same day that the new Barbie was released. In episode 14 of season 5, Lisa vs. Malibu Stacy, a news report is shown on TV documenting the release of the new Barbie doll. In our case, however, it was the new Barbie movie. At the end of the news report, the news anchor quickly slips in the fact that the US president had been arrested, and the segment ends. Trump was arrested the day that Barbie hit theaters. I know this one happened in 2023, but it just goes to show how scarily accurate The Simpsons have been in the past, making this list all the more terrifying.
Next up, we have 2023's Treehouse of Horror segment, Wild Bart's Can't Be Token. At the start of the episode, Mayor Quimby announces that the art museum is closing and that all art will now be sold as NFTs. Now, NFTs were a thing well before this episode was out, but AI art has really become more of a thing and more of a concern really this year. The idea that art museums could start closing up, being replaced by people just throwing on VR headsets and looking at quote-unquote art in a virtual reality setting, is really not that far-fetched. I mean, thank God Dune Part 2 came out, because it was really looking like movie theaters were gonna be done for by the end of this year. Anyway, this whole thing is just really creepy, and with how accurate The Simpsons are about things, I could see this one happening very soon.
The government or totally spies? I'm just kidding, this isn't a crossover episode, but rather a prediction made in the 2007 Simpsons movie, The Simpsons Movie. You know, the one where Homer causes Springfield to become the most polluted place in the world, leading to a giant glass dome being placed over the town by the Environmental Protection Agency in an attempt to contain the issue. Well, Homer, Marge, Lisa, Bart, and Maggie somehow manage to escape, but they are located by the National Security Agency, the NSA, who were able to track them by listening to their phone calls, tracking their locations, and monitoring them through video surveillance. Sound familiar? In 2013, just 6 years after the movie's release, the shoe dropped and the whistle blew when Edward Snowden revealed that the real-life NSA had been doing exactly that. While the information that the government is spying on us might seem like a throwaway topic of discussion today, back then it was a revelation and caused mass outrage. The Ebola outbreak of 2014 is next on the list. The epidemic was predicted in 1997, 17 years before the American outbreak took place. In episode 3 of season 9, Lisa's Sacks, Marge is seen reading Curious George and the Ebola virus to Bart in an attempt to cheer him up. While I am aware that the Ebola virus was already a thing in the 90s, in fact it was discovered in like 1976, the fact that it was paired with Curious George is what warrants the tableau earning itself a spot on today's list. You see, in 2014, the year of the outbreak, Curious George released its 100th episode. Coincidence? Perhaps, but it's a bit uncanny in my opinion. Speaking of outbreaks, remember that time we all had to stay home between the years of 2020 and 2022? Yeah, The Simpsons predicted that too. I mean, obviously, but not only did they predict the outbreak of an illness, they also predicted the outbreak of killer bees. bees. In episode 21 of season 4, Marge in Chains, which aired all the way back in 1993, an unprecedented flu sweeps through Springfield, which causes the townspeople to riot. During said riot, while the citizens of the town are demanding a cure for the illness, a swarm of killer bees is unleashed. 27 years later, not only do we experience a very famous outbreak that leaves all of us locked in our homes, in one of the same years, America and the western coast of Canada experienced an infestation of killer hornets, whose stings are extremely painful and in some cases lethal. Luckily, the insects have since been eradicated from the areas and we are now allowed to leave our houses, but like, come on, kick us when you're down, why don't ya? Walt Disney, Fox, or both. In season 10, episode 5, When You Dish Upon a Star, Homer decides to make a call to the 20th Century Fox executives to suggest an idea for a movie. The next scene, which is accompanied by a caption that reads 1 month later, shows that the 20th Century Fox Studios has now become a division of Walt Disney. The episode was aired in 1998, and the prediction came true 21 years later in 2019 when Disney announced its $71 billion merger with the company. While it is astounding just how many predictions The Simpsons have gotten right, I'm not sure if I can necessarily say I'm surprised by this one, as Disney at this point is known for buying up companies and franchises including Marvel, Hollywood Records, ABC, Vice Media, Pixar, National Geographic, ESPN, and many, many more. And finally, is it getting hot in here? If it is, you could try blocking the sun, like they did in season 6, episode 25 of The Simpsons, Who Shot Mr. Burns? In the episode, which aired in 1995, an oil reserve is discovered beneath the Springfield Elementary School. Mr. Burns is quick to begin drilling for oil, and then once he has emptied the reserve, Burns blocks out the sun so that every person in Springfield is forced to use energy from his power plant. While I don't necessarily understand the logic in the episode, I do understand that in 2023, 28 years after The Simpsons floated the original idea, George Soros has stated that it is his goal to block out the sun using geoengineering. But it's not actually as bad as it sounds. You see, while Soros does want to block out the sun, he only wants to do it in Antarctica, and he wants to do it in an effort to reduce the rate at which the Arctic ice is melting. Very interesting and definitely something to look out for.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Prince Philip's passing. Last year in April of 2021, Prince Philip, the husband to Queen Elizabeth II, passed away, and it is said that The Simpsons might have predicted his death right down to the day. In season 7, episode 3, Home Sweet Home Diddly Dum Doodly, the Simpsons neighbors, the Flanders, temporarily take the children in after a lice outbreak. Apparently they're all driving in a car on the way to church, and baby Maggie suddenly just turns her head to Bart and Lisa and says, quote, Prince Philip will die on April 9th, 2021. Okay, it's probably the most on-the-nose prediction, and all I can say is, how? Apparently the line has since been replaced in recent versions, but it is said that this is actually what was said in the original broadcast, which happened in 1995, 26 years before his actual passing. It truly is one of those chilling Simpsons predictions moments. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Queen's passing. There are many viral TikToks that have been going around since the Queen's passing that suggest that The Simpsons actually predicted her death. The episode in question is season 15, episode 4, The Regina Monologues, which we will be talking about a few more times today. But to start off with, we have this recent rumor. The TikToks have been edited with certain footage in a way that suggests that this episode did in fact predict the Queen's death, but when we watch the entire episode, that is likely not the case at all. The episode doesn't show the way in which the Queen passed, and also, she doesn't even die in the episode. While this was a very clever trick to get a viral TikTok video, it looks like this is one time when we've all been bamboozled, and the writers didn't quite predict our reality. In our number 8 spot today, we have The Accident. Okay, so we just talked a little bit about the Regina Monologues episode, but that is not where the predictions end for this one. In the episode, the Simpson family rents a Mini Cooper and they start driving around London. Marge is shocked at how well everything is going on their first trip to England, but of course that can only last for so long. They get stuck on a roundabout, which is honestly a universal experience. I mean, they're so confusing when you're not used to them. Why do they even exist? And the family starts to drive in circles for hours. Homer finally decides that enough is enough and decides to break out of the roundabout. When he does this, however, he plows straight through the gates of Buckingham Palace and he slams into Queen Elizabeth II's horse-drawn carriage. Now, we know this didn't happen in real life, but this could be a prediction that something similar might happen in in real life. Probably not as a result of a roundabout, but people try to do strange things when it comes to protected places. People try to sneak into Buckingham Palace all the time. It wouldn't necessarily be surprising to see something like this happen, but hopefully this is just a premise that will stay in the animated show where it truly does belong. In our number 7 spot today, we have Standing Trial. After this horse-drawn carriage accident, Homer has no idea who he just knocked down, and he starts trying to sort of brush the whole thing off. Of course, this isn't accepted, and immediately the Scots guardsmen start beating him to a pulp. After this, however, Homer is put on trial for causing harm to the Queen, as well as for wrecking her carriage. On trial, Homer calls the Queen an imposter because her luggage has the inscription HRH. Of course, meant to mean Her Royal Highness, Homer suggests that this is actually short for Henrietta R. Hippo. Can totally see how he got there. Rather than believing this is a prediction that the Queen is really Henrietta Hippo, some people believe that this is just a grim prediction for a monarch's future. Of course, there are plenty of safety protocols put in place, but some are worried that this might mean that this episode might be predicting that we will see someone stand trial in the future for trying to harm the head of state. Whether or not you enjoy the royal family, it's safe to say that most people hope that they don't get harmed, either intentionally or otherwise, so hopefully this is one prediction that just does not come true.
Number 6. French Fiasco. The French have been an ally to the Western world for the entirety of modern history, but in Treehouse of Horror 8, all of that is thrown out the window when Mayor Quimby makes an apparently offensive frog's legs joke and refuses to apologize, telling them to do their worst. Even Marge joins in on the jabs by saying, "You know how unpredictable the French are. One minute they're kissing a woman's hand, the next they're chopping off her head." Well, the French president didn't take too kindly to this and starts a war by launching a neutron that levels the town, leaving Homer as the last person alive in all of Springfield, and we all know that leaving Homer alone is a terrible idea. Now, it should be painfully obvious why France launching missiles aimed at the US would be something we don't want to happen, but that's not the only scary prediction from this episode. Number 5. Teleportation. In Fly vs. Fly, the second story in this episode, Homer buys a teleportation pod from Professor Frink for 50 cents. A damn good deal if you ask me, but maybe too good to be true, as the rest of the episode shows some of the terrors that could come with this tech. Instantly arriving somewhere else on the Earth after simply stepping into a pod has been a dream of many scientists for centuries, and the practical applications would change society as we know it. And there have been some crazy advancements, like the Chinese scientists who teleported particles to a satellite in space. But in the episode, we get a warning of the dangers that could lie ahead, with reference to the classic science fiction horror, The Fly. We see the loyal Simpson pets, Santa's Little Helper, and Snowball 2 becoming merged together Cronenberg style, and Bart gets the idea to turn into a superhero with the power of flight by merging with the Fly. Clearly he didn't see what happened to Jeff Goldblum, but life finds a way. And Bart and the Fly switch heads when their DNA is merged together, leading to the horror show of what the family has to deal with. I don't know about you, but I don't plan on mixing my DNA with any other creatures, so until that's sorted out, I'll stick with the TARDIS. Number 4. Colonization of Mars. Season 27, episode 16, has the Simpsons signing up to be some of the first colonizers of the Red Planet, albeit somewhat unwillingly, and eventually their trip turns out to be a scam perpetrated by the scientists, whose rocket fails to start, and when they try to flee the scene, their car can't start either. But at the end of the episode, we get a time jump to 2051 and see them actually living on Mars, though Lisa now wants to leave and move to Venus, which would be an absolutely horrible idea. Though the idea of Mars colonization is thrown around all the time these days, the thought that we may have to use it as a necessity when we finish destroying this planet is not a future I look forward to. But I mean, I'd probably go. Would you? Number 3. The Dome. The main plot device in the Simpsons movie comes in the form of a giant dome encapsulating the entire town of Springfield after pollution has led to mutations in local wildlife, and not just the three-eyed fish near the nuclear plant. Stephen King actually released his novel turned TV series Under the Dome in 2009, 2 years after the Simpsons movie debut. Another prediction, perhaps? While the idea is incredibly silly, we have seen in the past few years that quarantine can become a reality for us, albeit without the impenetrable dome, but who knows, maybe in the future this could become a real thing to stop environmental disasters from getting out of hand, like catching a hurricane in a bottle or something. Ridiculous, I know, but let's just hope we never have to use it. Number 2. time travel. People assume that time is a strict progression from cause to effect, but actually from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff. And The Simpsons have dabbled with time travel many times over their 34 seasons, but in Treehouse of Horror 5, we get a glimpse of what is commonly known as the butterfly effect. I know Ashton Kutcher's ears just pricked up when I said that. Time travel could have insane implications on the human race, but there are multiple theories on how it would work. Maybe if you went to the past, you would create an entirely new timeline where things are different. Or maybe nothing is able to be changed at all because time is constant and what has happened has always happened. But in the episode, we see that Homer's small changes in the past with his time-traveling toaster bring massive consequences forward, like Flanders ruling the world, people becoming giants, and even the world having no knowledge of donuts. So, if time travel becomes a reality, and maybe it already has in the future, we need to be careful not to mess with anything, or we risk losing everything. And finally, we reach our number 1, mini black hole. In Treehouse of Horror 23, the town of Springfield begrudgingly builds a particle reactor instead of a baseball stadium and creates a tiny black hole, which swallows up a few residents before Lisa can move it to her basement for safekeeping. After she warns the family to not throw anything into it, lest it grow bigger, they do exactly that, and it becomes massive and swallows everything in its path, taking the townsfolk to an alternate dimension where aliens worship the trash they disposed of in the hole. Black holes are scary enough on their own, let alone what would happen if one was to pop up on Earth, already surrounded by matter it could consume. So hopefully this prediction never happens, or we wouldn't know what hit us until we were spaghettified, which is an actual scientific term describing what would happen if you fell into a black hole. You would be stretched infinitely thin as you were pulled across the event horizon, and since time is affected by gravity, it would last an infinite amount of time. Spaghettification, your new word of the week.
Alright, starting off this list, number 10, we have people will sell rodents as dogs. In the episode titled Papa's Got a Brand New Badge from 2002, one of the characters decided to glue cotton balls on ferrets and sell them as toy poodles. Well, it turns out they may have inspired a real-life criminal. Is this real life right now? Well, in 2013, a man in Argentina took his toy poodle to the vet after paying $150, only to find out that they were actually ferrets pumped with steroids to look like dogs. I mean, what the absolutely heck happened there? Is this actually a real story? Number 9 is snake assassination. In 1993 episode titled Whacking Day, the citizens of Springfield rushed to clobber hundreds of snakes that lured into the city. Luckily in the episode their minds are changed on the matter, but a similar annual event actually takes place in Florida called the Python Challenge. Participants challenge each other to see who can kill the most wild and invasive Burmese pythons. They don't do this for fun though, they do it because they pose a risk to the ecosystem of the Florida Everglades. Still a pretty gruesome tradition if you asked me. Next up, number 8, we have obviously the America attack. I don't even know if I can say it. It happened in September. Well, the episode was called The City of New York versus Homer Simpson, and that aired back in 1997. Well, 4 years before what happened in America that changed America forever, well, it alluded to the fact that something would happen to the Twin Towers. In the episode, there is a flyer that can be seen that says $9, and behind the 9 is a picture of the Twin Towers, making it look like it says September of 2011. While I personally think that this is a little bit of a stretch, it is at the same time a pretty big coincidence. One of the executive producers of the show even admitted back in 2010 that it is a pretty airy comparison, but he never denied that he actually predicted it. Taking the number 7 spot is Disney buys 20th Century Fox. Bold prediction, but listen to this. In another episode, When You Wish Upon a Star from 1998, one scene depicts a large sign that reads 20th Century Fox, a division of Walt Disney Co. Nearly 20 years later, Disney actually did acquire 20th Century Fox. Apparently the writers just thought that this was inevitable because mergers happen all the time, and also Disney really likes buying everything that is good.
At number 6, Big Ben goes digital. In the show's Lisa's Wedding episode back in '95, the show hinted at a glimpse of what they thought 2010 might look like. Lisa's rendezvous with a British beau showcased a Big Ben with a new digital face, suggesting a technological makeover. Later, around 17 seasons onward, the same digitized Big Ben appeared near St. Beetle's Cathedral in Holidays of Future Past. Fast forward to reality, and Big Ben faced a period of silence due to repairs, but returned to its normal form after renovations to match the 21st century standards. Yet, the notion of going completely digital seems a bit far-fetched, despite upgrades. The idea might be intriguing for the show's fictional future, but doesn't align with the real-world plans of this iconic clock tower. Or so we can only hope. At number 5 is the network conglomerate. The Simpsons' knack for predicting the future has been a hot topic over the years, and in one episode, ABC merged with other networks, hinted at forming CNNBCBS. That's a big acronym. Now, network mergers aren't uncommon. We've seen many happening lately, shaking up the entertainment industry. It's not far-fetched considering how companies tend to consolidate power. But, and this is a big but, the same episode portrayed Fox's evolution into a more adult-themed channel, if you catch my drift. Now that part seems way more unlikely. Predicting mergers is a plausible guess, given the trend, but turning Fox into a adult channel it's a big stretch. The future is a puzzle, and The Simpsons sometimes get the pieces right, but not all of them fit snugly into the bigger picture. At number 4 is real Bigfoot evidence. While out on a camping trip, Homer gets mistaken for Bigfoot while covered in mud on a camping trip, which prompted scientists to actually start taking Bigfoot research seriously. But then there's the twist, where Bart supposedly encounters a genuine Sasquatch in 2002 during a trip in Canada. It's all entertainment, right? However, these fictional portrayals occasionally blur the lines between fact and fiction. I'm at the bottom. What if amidst the satire lies a seed of truth? Bigfoot's existence remains unproven, but intriguing evidence pops up sporadically. Reports, footprints, and blurry images fuel the fascination. Scientific scrutiny often debunks these as hoaxes or misidentifications, yet the legend persists, tucked away within forests and folklore. The Simpsons, known for their odd predictions, might be onto something. Maybe not concrete proof, but perhaps an acknowledgement these mysteries still endure. Bigfoot's reality is a murky, debatable territory, but who knows? In the vast unknown, a creature like Bigfoot might still wander, elusive and ready to be taken seriously in 2024, or so I hope. At number 3 is the first foreign president. Remember in the Simpsons movie when Springfield is quarantined by a giant dome? Of course you do. But what you might not remember is that order came from none other than President Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah, that's right. President Arnold Schwarzenegger stands as a curious anomaly. The Constitution strictly demands a president to be a natural-born citizen or a citizen at the time of the Constitution's adoption. Arnold Schwarzenegger, although a former Californian governor with political experience, was not born in the US, so legally he couldn't become the president, as evident in the Constitution's words. However, some interpretations can vary, leaving a little bit of space for debate. The Simpsons ventured into this territory, envisioning a presidency held by Schwarzenegger, building a giant dome over Springfield. It's pretty intriguing, but we need to remember the Constitution's steadfast rules about presidential eligibility. But perhaps in the future, someone might propose an amendment to the Constitution that would allow foreign-born citizens to run for president. Although the Simpsons predicted his presidency, the Constitution seemingly bars his eligibility. However, the definition of natural-born citizen remains debatable and leaves room for potential amendment. At number 2 is Trump's 2024 presidential campaign. In the realm of Simpsons predictions, one that's garnered much attention is the re-emergence of Donald Trump in 2024 US presidential election. See, back in 2015, the Simpsons episode titled Trumptastic Journey eerily foresaw Trump's ascent to presidency. This uncanny foreshadowing showcased a campaign sign reading Trump 2024, hinting at his future run, which indeed shook reality. One of the producers of the show took to Twitter to highlight this eerie prediction turned reality, emphasizing the accuracy of their depiction of Trump's presidential journey. Notably, the episode also hinted at the prospect of Trump's involvement in the 2028 elections, raising further intrigue about the show's predictive abilities. Does this signify a genuine foresight or a mere coincidence? Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments. And at number 1 is virtual reality food. In one glimpse of the show, The Simpsons showcased Homer and Marge indulging in virtual fudge through VR glasses and feeding tubes, transporting taste without the calories. Surprisingly, despite the virtual aspect, Homer's love for junk food remained unchanged. Now, in real life, companies like Royal Caribbean are eyeing VR dining for cruise guests, prompting an immersive culinary journey. Even food scientists at Cornell University discovered that eating cheese in a pleasant VR VR environment enhanced its taste. Now, while it might seem like a sci-fi idea, the concept of virtual food experiences is actually taking shape, aiming to offer not just sustenance, but a whole new sensory adventure. The convergence of technology and dining might redefine how we perceive and enjoy food in the not-so-distant future of 2024.
Coming in at number 10 is mind control through music. We all remember the Shane Dawson era of conspiracy theories where he said there were secret messages in songs, right? Well, it seems like that conspiracy might become real within the next year. In an episode called New Kids on the Bleach, which aired in 2021, the plot involved Bart, Milhouse, Nelson, and Ralph becoming members of an all-new boy band called the Party Posse. However, the band is actually a PSYOPs project by the US Navy to bombard people with subliminal messages. Their hit song Dropped a Bomb features the chorus of Yavin et Noji, which is of course join the Navy spelled backwards. This was meant to be a joke, but how far from the truth is it? Could this be a prediction of the way the music industry is heading? Songs are getting more and more reliant on strange frequencies and bizarre auto-tuning effects, so it truly wouldn't surprise me if they tried to do this. Number 9. War between the USA and China. One of the scariest predictions made on The Simpsons is when they suggest there could be a nuclear war between the US and China. In one of their episodes, the news anchor can be heard saying, "It is with great sadness that I inform you that America and China have declared war. A massive nuclear attack is expected to reach our shores within the hour." Now, more recently, in real life, tensions have been rising between the US and China. With all the other wars going on, could this one result in a World War III and a nuclear war? That would be horrible. Now, according to CNBC, China is rapidly expanding its nuclear arsenal and could have 1,000 nuclear warheads by 2030, part of Beijing's ambitious military buildup. Now, as of 2021, humanity had about 13,410 nuclear weapons, which personally just makes me a little uncomfortable. And if things do go south and there is a nuke war, large parts of Earth will become uninhabitable due to the effects of nuclear warfare, potentially causing the collapse of civilization and, in the worst case, extinction of humanity and or termination of all biological life on Earth. Now, this is very possible, and I am very scared. Number 8. Translate baby talk. In one episode, Homer's sibling Herb attempts to invent something that would make him rich. He lands on a translator for a baby using Maggie as the test subject. As she adorably babbles on, the translator interprets her request as lavish attention on me and entertain. Now, while in the real world, people have attempted to mimic that with the Infant Cries Translator app trying to do just that, nothing has come close as to Herb improperly deciphering the baby babble to a coherent sentence. In 2022, a company called Zoundream tried to create a similar device called Baby T, which they are currently testing. Maybe it will be successful and we'll be able to understand what babies are saying once and for all. I mean, I want to know what's going on in their little minds. Don't you? Number 7. Black hole. In the second episode of season 24, the Springfield Subatomic Super Collider creates a miniature black hole that endangers the town. The Springfield citizens go to see the activation of the Springfield Subatomic Super Collider, which was built instead of a new baseball stadium due to lobbying of Lisa. Professor Frank activates the machine and it works, but nothing exciting happens, and everyone blames Lisa for her suggestion. Now, after everyone leaves, two particles collide with each other and create a small black hole, which floats off and it eventually destroys everything in its path. Now, the prediction of a black hole sucking up Springfield raises concerns about a catastrophic natural event that our world has never experienced before. Now, whether it is actually a black hole that destroys us, it is important to note that the world's largest particle accelerator was turned on once again in the year of 2022. After 3 years of upgrades and maintenance, it immediately observed 3 exotic particles for the first time. The Large Hadron Collider, LHC is now up and running, breaking records for the highest energy particle collisions ever performed. Could the LHC cause something like this? I guess we'll have to see.
Next up, we've got economic collapse, which is ironically predicted in the same episode that showcases Trump's 2024 presidential campaign, season 11, episode 17. In the episode, we see the United States economy taking a nosedive right into the ground. Is it BS, or did a group of economic analysts studying the trajectory of economic fall predict either a collapse or major restructuring of the American economy? Here's a hint. It's the second one. But I don't really think this prediction is exclusive to America. We are seeing major economic downfall in many countries, which isn't really surprising considering what we all went through in 2020 and the years that followed. You know, when restaurants shut down and remote working became the norm. And with the state of the world right now, we are looking at a pretty bearish economy. I don't actually know if that word applies here, but basically we're looking at a downwards trajectory.
Next up on the list, we have hover cars. Now, hover cars are of course not unique to The Simpsons. Hover cars are something we've seen in science fiction since the dawn of science fiction, basically. So it's not like The Simpsons came up with something mind-blowing here, but what is pretty mind-blowing is that there is a company called Samson Sky that's saying they're gonna bring out a flying car in 2024. They've already made it, actually. It's just not readily available yet. They call it Switchblade, the world's first flying sports car. Now, from what I can gather from the promo video of this thing, it's really more of just a car with retractable wings that doubles as a car-sized plane. The type of hovering vehicle you're probably thinking of is not really what this thing is, but it's still pretty cool. I mean, retractable wings, it's very like Batman-ish. I don't know what the regulations will be for something like this though. I mean, like, are you gonna need a pilot's license to fly it? How can traffic be controlled in the air with all these like flying cars zipping around? There's a lot to consider. We're not gonna be seeing tons of people using flying cars this year, I don't think, but it's cool that there is one that exists.
Next up, we've got the mission to Mars. In season 27, episode 6, Lisa Simpson, along with the rest of the family, volunteers for a colonization mission to Mars. While the mission is originally set for a date in the future, it gets bumped up due to fear of loss of funding. When it comes time for the space shuttle to launch, Marge and Lisa are strapped in, but ultimately the mission is a failure and the shuttle never actually leaves the ground. If you can't see the connection between this episode's events and current advancements in space travel and technology, you might want to brush up on your current events. Elon Musk has been talking about the colonization of Mars for ages. He even built an entire company, SpaceX, around the goal of colonizing the red planet. In fact, in 2023, the SpaceX Starship was launched. The event ultimately ended in flames because the thing exploded just 4 minutes after takeoff. Luckily, the ship was unmanned. But based off of The Simpsons, it is possible that this year we will see a manned mission launched into space. I mean, it is only natural with the trajectory of the company. And the goal is experimenting with humans' ability to reach Mars. I just hope this launch goes better than the last one. Oh, and by the way, at the end of the episode, a quick clip shows the successful colonization of Mars, which is set to take place in 2051. So stay tuned for that video.
Next on the list, we have the baby translator. So in the season 3, episode 24, Brother, Can You Spare 2 Dimes, Homer's brother Herb invents a device that allows a parent to figure out what their infant's cries mean. They're not really saying much, are they? I need some food. You're not getting a whole lot of info out of these things, I'd imagine. What a godsend, though, a piece of tech like this would be, just to immediately know and then, deal with the issue. Well, turns out there is something like it already in the works, and we're not even halfway through the year yet, so who knows, we may start seeing it get used later in 2024. The company behind the tech is called Zoundream, and they're making some pretty interesting strides in infant care tech. On their site, they describe their cry analysis tech. Here's what it says on the site. Using a comprehensive multimodal approach, we've investigated infant cries, analyzing various aspects such as acoustics, electroencephalography, EEG signals, regional cerebral oxygen saturation, NIRS, facial expressions, and other specific parameters. All these studies have helped us to develop our advanced cry analysis technology. There you go, that explains it. You don't even need to buy one of these things. I can just analyze my own acoustics and electrocephalologs and cerebral cortexes and specific parameters. I'll be able to translate babies.
Next up, we've got the government trying to control us, surprise, surprise, through a series of subconscious processes, including music-induced mind control. In season 12, episode 14, New Kids on the Block, I don't know why it's called that, a music producer takes Bart, Nelson, Milhouse, and Ralph to form a boy band, Party Posse. Their first song was a top hit, but it was also subliminal mind control. The chorus, Ivan et Nioj, was actually join the Navy spelt backwards, and soon the population of Springfield was scrambling to secure a spot serving their country. When Bart's sister Lisa confronted the music producer, he admitted that he was in fact a Navy lieutenant, and that subliminal messaging in music had been a long-standing strategy in recruiting young men into the military. With the way the world stands today, we might very well see an uproar in military propaganda in the coming months. Whether or not that takes the form of subliminal messages in hit pop songs remains to be seen, but if any of these other Simpsons predictions are a staple, a reminder, I can't think of the word, it's likely.
Alright, in season 21's Treehouse of Horror episode, there's a segment called Don't Have a Cow, Mankind. So here Krusty the Clown introduces a new type of Krusty burger with meat made from cows who have eaten other cows. That's just hilarious and oddly believable. I could see a fast food company, like a really dirty fast food company, just being like, it's mega meat. All these cows eat other cows, brother. Anyway, this new burger causes like a mad cow type disease in the town of Springfield, turning people into zombies, or munchers as they're called in this episode. Now again, it's not like The Simpsons invented a zombie apocalypse by any stretch, but with how many things that have played out in real life with an eerie similarity to events in The Simpsons, I'm just gonna stay away if any new fast food burger comes out this year with some new weirdo meat, especially if it's meat coming from a cow that grazed on beef. That is funny in a cartoon, vomitrocious in real life. So first up we have Trump 2024. So back in 2015, there was a Simpsons short called Trumptastic Voyage. In a scene where Homer flies by a billboard, we see a sign that reads Trump 2024. Of course, not only did Trump end up running again in 2024, but he won. To take things just a step further though, life imitated art again when Donald Trump was arrested the same day the Barbie movie was released. Now, what am I referring to here? Well, in episode 14 of season 5, Lisa vs. Malibu Stacy, a news report is shown on TV documenting the release of the new Malibu Stacy doll, pretty much the Barbie of the Simpsons universe. At the end of the news report, Kent Brockman quickly slips in the fact that the US president has been arrested, and then the segment ends. So the US president of the Simpsons universe was arrested on the day of a Malibu Stacy movie coming out, and in real life, Trump was arrested the day Barbie hit theaters. Not on the same charges, to be fair. In The Simpsons, Brockman casually revealed that the president had killed someone, but the fact that the real life played out kinda like it did in The Simpsons, not just with Trump's political comeback, but the fact that he ended up being arrested on the day of the Barbie movie's release, just like the president in the cartoon as well, definitely a weird one. In the 1992 episode Lisa the Greek, Homer figures out that Lisa has a weirdly accurate knack for predicting NFL game outcomes. She gets upset when she realizes that he's been using her predictions for gambling, and completely distraught, she makes her own gamble. If she still loves her dad, Washington will win the Super Bowl, but if she doesn't, then the Buffalo Bills will win. In the end, Washington wins. All is well, move on to the next episode and more hijinks ensue. But here's what happened in real life, and just a few days after the episode aired, no less, Washington defeated Buffalo in the Super Bowl. Now, alright, it's 50-50 odds, big deal, but then the following year, Fox re-aired the episode. They tweaked it for the upcoming Super Bowl, changing some lines, adding the Dallas Cowboys to replace Washington. In the episode, Dallas wins, and sure enough, Dallas ended up winning in real life too. Next year's Super Bowl saw the two teams facing each other again, and The Simpsons once again re-aired the episode, updating another couple lines to account for the rematch, and once again, Dallas took the win. In the 1995 episode Lisa's Wedding, Lisa gets a glimpse of the future during a visit to a fortune teller. Fast forward to 2010 and Lisa is talking to Marge on her phone using something called a picture phone. It's a video call, which back in the day would have seemed so futuristic. I mean, people were still capturing video on clunky VHS cameras back then. But of course, today we have FaceTime and plenty of other video calling apps. Video calling isn't exciting at all nowadays, depending who you're talking to, that is. Now, sure, other shows and movies have predicted similar technology all the way back to Star Trek in the 60s, but things get even more specific here. Keep in mind what year the video phone was shown in The Simpsons, 2010. Well, in real life, it was 2010 that Apple came out with FaceTime. Steve Jobs announced the breakthrough video calling technology as part of the iPhone 4 release. In the 2016 episode Friends and Family, Mr. Burns gets curious about virtual reality after meeting Professor Fink, who's rocking a VR headset. Burns decides to try out the tech himself, and before long, he's got a whole virtual family program using The Simpsons, minus Homer of course, as his test subjects. By the end of the episode, pretty much everyone in Springfield is walking around wearing VR glasses, living their lives in a digital world. While in our universe, just last year, in February of 2024, Apple released the Apple Vision Pro. This insane mixed reality headset, a combination of virtual and augmented reality that overlays digital media onto the real world that you are observing. I haven't tried it. I've only ever tried standard VR, which is the most 2025 thing I've said so far this year. But from what I've seen of the Apple Vision Pro, it looks totally sci-fi and pretty similar to the technology seen in the Simpsons episode. Not everyone is using this technology yet, but early adopters are already making this a part of their daily routines.
In our number 6 spot today, we have the sentencing. For the final prediction that comes with this whirlwind of an episode, after Homer accuses the Queen of being Henrietta R. Hippo, she is of course outraged and she sentences him to being imprisoned in the Tower of London, later to be executed by beheading, and to have his head placed on a spike. In the end, the Queen does pardon Homer, but some have suggested that this might be a prediction that we might see some old historical and horrifying royal practices come back in the future. We'll talk about a similar kind of prediction with another royal family member later in this list, but some people believe that these sort of gruesome forms of capital punishment might end up coming back. To end off this episode, the Queen only agrees to pardon Homer on the condition that the Simpson family take Madonna with them when they left. I don't think that part is any kind of real prediction, I just wanted to include it because it's pretty funny. In our number 5 spot today, we have royal spying. In an episode of The Simpsons, the now King Charles III, along with his late mother, Queen Elizabeth II, can be seen watching over Springfield. They're doing this through surveillance cameras that have been planted all over the town. Some people have suggested that this perhaps is a prediction that could already be happening or might be something that our future holds. It's safe to say that the UK already does have its fair share of CCTV cameras, which for many reasons is great, but of course people worry about being spied on, which is entirely fair. I don't necessarily think that the royal family just sits around spying on everyone, but there is definitely potential that they, or people working from them, know more than anyone would like to know, making the royal family sound like the CIA, but who knows? The Simpsons have definitely predicted stranger things. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Tyrant. This is one prediction that The Simpsons made that, while hopefully unlikely, we'll definitely just have to wait and see to find out. In The Simpsons, while Prince Harry doesn't make a lot of appearances, they do include him in the show of course, and they have quite a grim prediction for his future self. They suggest that perhaps in the future Prince Harry has risen to power. It's not so bad. Prince Harry is certainly one of the more likable members of the royal family. I know for some of you that's a hot take, but regardless, although Harry is not in line for the throne and has almost mostly renounced his royalty, he is still part of the family, and again, stranger things have happened. Once in power, however, things go awry and Harry proves to be an entirely different person than anyone would have expected. In The Simpsons, once in power, Harry becomes a ruthless tyrant who is so bad that he reinstates capital punishment, but this time he's taking a tip from his ancestors. It's not just regular modern day capital punishment that we see now, it is of course in royal family fashion, done in the form of beheadings. In our number 3 spot today, we have Out of Control. This is another Simpsons prediction that, depending on how you look at it, could be one that you could say did come true. When the Simpsons family went to England, most of the newspapers in the episode showed that they were reporting on the trial of Homer for harming the Queen. Of course, that's like one of the central focuses of the episode, so it makes a lot of sense, but there is one paper that has a different headline. In the episode, it's actually the Daily Mail, and they have the headline, quote, "Bart and Prince Harry out of control," and it shows a picture of the two outside of a bar. Now, I'm not saying that Prince Harry went on a pub crawl and got messy with Bart Simpson, but there are people who didn't enjoy how Prince Harry has chosen to live his life. We all have haters, no worries Prince Harry, but many people would suggest that his behavior is, quote, out of control. I personally disagree, but I know not everyone does. It's safe to say that Prince Harry likely won't be seen outside of any bar on a newspaper cover anytime soon, but who am I to say for sure? In our number 2 spot today, we have King Henry VIII. Less of a prediction for the future, considering this episode was strictly about historical figures. Season 15, episode 11, Margical History Tour, takes us back in time and shows us a Simpsons version of the life of King Henry VIII. Known for being quite a terrible person and an absolutely horrible husband, the episode, while of course taking quite a few liberties, really is surprisingly accurate for a comedy animation show. The king was married 6 times, and in the episode he beheads quite a few of his wives. In reality it was only 2, but still 2 is more than enough for us in the future to add a couple extra in for dramatic effect. While this episode is just a fun premise for a silly episode, some worry that this might be a prediction for how the royal family might fall back into some old practices. Queen Elizabeth II was incredibly loved by those who support the monarchy, and it's safe to say that her successor does not have the same kind of adoration. This makes people worried that things might end up in a more grim place than how the Queen left them. In our number 1 spot today, we have Prince Christian. A departure from the British royal family, this young prince made a debut in the animated show. Prince Christian of Denmark, who is now 16, is 12 years old in the episode. The Simpsons family travels to Denmark for a medical treatment for Grandpa, and it is here that Lisa meets the man of her dreams, the skateboarding prince. The episode skips to the future and it shows Lisa and the prince getting married and waving from their balcony. Of course, no one thinks that this very real prince is going to marry the very fictional Lisa Simpson, but some believe that perhaps this might be a prediction for the future of the prince's love life. Normally, royal marriages are strategic, but it's possible, similar to Prince Harry, that Prince Christian might just meet his future love in a more non-traditional fashion. The prince is obviously still quite young, so only time will tell with this.
In 1994, The Simpsons had a moment where lunch lady Doris pours assorted horse parts from a giant metal tub labeled assorted horse parts into the school meals at Springfield Elementary. It's a quick gag, just a part of the show's usual weirdness, but in 2013, that throwaway joke became one of the more talked about scenes in the show, and not for a good reason. A bunch of horse DNA was found in beef products in the United Kingdom. People were eating burgers, understandably believing that there was no trace of horse meat in it. As authorities worked to track down the perps, it turned out this was not just a one-off mistake either. It was a massive fraud. Companies were deliberately passing off horse meat as beef in all kinds of products, from frozen meals to burgers. The whole thing led to product recalls, public outrage, and a serious drop in trust for food companies. The Simpsons had foreshadowed the whole scandal with one random visual gag. Now let's look at a much later episode that is still over a decade old now. Yikes. Season 23, episode 21, Ned and Edna's Blenda Agenda. In this episode, Homer's phone briefly shows an app with a large X as the logo, amongst other more standard looking social media apps. If you weren't paying attention, you'd totally miss it, which people did back in 2012, but when Twitter rebranded to X in 2023, and someone decided to rewatch season 23 of The Simpsons for some reason, they were likely like, holy crap, Homer has X on his phone. The Simpsons writers didn't predict the exact company or context, but they did nail the idea of an X symbol taking over a major platform. Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter, including ditching the iconic blue bird logo for a bold X as part of his vision to transform the platform. Now, is a company with an X logo really that out there and original? No, but it is interesting that this fictional logo was specifically meant to be a social media app. In the 1995 episode Lisa's Wedding, Lisa's future was a mix of predictions, some obvious, some way out there. One of the more bizarre moments was when the episode showed librarians being replaced by robots. Back then, the idea of robots in libraries seemed so futuristic, almost impossible. But in 2016, a group of students at a university in Wales debuted a robot librarian named Hugh. Hugh was designed to help library goers by guiding them to books and listening to their requests. Not only did The Simpsons get the idea of robot librarians right, but they also nailed the name, Hugh. And yeah, I'm guessing the university students named their robot after The Simpsons episode specifically, but still, pretty cool. Hugh was not the only piece of futurism predicted in this episode, though. The show also had a shot of a building behind London's Tower Bridge, and it looked exactly like the Shard. But the thing is, this building wouldn't start construction until 2009, years after the episode aired. Was this just a lucky coincidence? Well, considering The Simpsons' track record, I don't know. The Frying Dutchman episode of The Simpsons shows Homer at an all-you-can-eat seafood buffet. Of course, in true Homer fashion, he overdoes it, eating so much shrimp and lobster that he's eventually just kicked out of the restaurant, so he decides to sue for false advertising. Well, years later, a man in Massachusetts, Springfield, Massachusetts, sued the Golden Corral buffet chain for $2 million, claiming false advertising after being kicked out of the restaurant for eating too much. So yeah, he was essentially in the same position as Homer. Oh, and the case even ended in an out-of-court settlement, just like in the episode. The similarity is wild, especially considering the case wasn't some huge media sensation. It was just one guy trying to get back at a buffet that kicked him out for eating too much. I've heard pretty much every one of these Simpsons predictions, but this one's new to me.
Number 6 goes to Super Bowls 26, 27, and 28. Okay, so this one is really only a disaster to the teams who lost 3 years. Okay, so this one is really only a disaster to the teams who lost these years. In 1992, an episode called Lisa the Geek aired, and in it was all about predictions. Well, it turns out the writers were a bit better at predicting the future than they thought. Predicting that Washington Redskins would win against the Buffalo Bills in the Super Bowl, well, this ended up coming true a few days later. They reworked the episode the following 2 years with the new Super Bowl teams Dallas Cowboys and Buffalo Bills, and each year predicted that Dallas would win, and guess what? They did. Coming at number 5, we have the Ebola outbreak. This episode called Lisa's Sack, and this aired 17 years before the Ebola outbreak. Bart is sick and he reads a book titled Curious George and the Ebola Virus. So some people are a bit skeptic about this one because technically Ebola did exist at the time of this episode when it aired, but it wasn't particularly widespread throughout the world. So what is it that made the Simpsons writer choose this particular virus, the Ebola virus, out of the countless others that existed? Well, obviously they knew what was going to happen. They knew that the Ebola virus would be the one that would spread. Our number 4 slot goes to robotic librarians. In the episode Lisa's Wedding, which aired in 1995, the librarians have all been replaced by robots. Then over 20 years later, students at a university, well, they created a prototype for a robotic librarian, and scientists in Singapore also started creating their own versions of one. While this does sound like it would be really cool to see, if they start to appear in common places, well, this will eliminate jobs for human librarians and all these other places. Librarians offer too much that I don't think robots are going to be able to do in the same capacity. Next up, number 3, Michelangelo Censorship is an episode from the 90s called Itchy and Scratchy and Marge. The resident of Springfield get up in arms about statue of David being nude. They protest against him being exhibited at the museum as a result of him not being clothed. It sounds a little ridiculous to censor art, but the exact same situation happened 36 years later in Russia, so maybe not so ridiculous, when locals debated clothing a replica of the statue that has been placed in St. Petersburg. I'm honestly not entirely sure if that happened, but if it did, I'm kind of curious of what kind of clothing was put on him. Number 2 goes to all-you-can-eat restaurants being sued for false advertising. So this one was a disaster for the restaurant, but a huge win for everybody else. In an episode from 1992 called A New Kid on the Block, Homer got kicked out of all-you-can-eat restaurant for eating almost all the food at the buffet. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I wouldn't kick him out. I would applaud. I'd be like, yo, that was pretty impressive, my friend. Well, he proceeded to sue them for false advertising and won. Then in 2017, a man in Massachusetts brought the episode to life. He did the exact same thing. I mean, I don't think he ate all the food at the buffet. I'm not sure if that's entirely possible, but he ate too much apparently, according to the restaurant. And finally, for our finale today, and the number one spot goes to the episode that predicted the Game of Thrones finale. I mean, Game of Thrones is hard to predict. Unless your prediction was everyone dies, then I think you got it correct. Well, if you still haven't caught the last episode of Game of Thrones, close your ears for this one. It is absolutely a huge spoiler. The episode called The Surf Sons, which came out in 2017. Well, it took place in a weird medieval Simpsons universe. In an episode that had a setting that looked remarkably similar to the Game of Thrones world, a dragon can be seen burning a village to the ground. This is exactly what happened in one of the final episodes of Game of Thrones.
All right, we're starting things off with robot workers. So in the season 6 episode Itchy and Scratchy Land, the Simpsons visit this kind of futuristic theme park featuring, of course, the beloved and violent Itchy and Scratchy. In this theme park though, instead of having actors in costumes like you'd see at Disneyland, the cartoon cat and mouse are brought to life with robots. Now, robots replacing jobs is not an idea unique to The Simpsons or anything. This is a very well-explored genre of science fiction. It's not even a novel idea that robotic characters would be used in a theme park. I mean, we've had versions of this for years with places like Chuck E. Cheese, but those are animatronics far less advanced than what we see in this episode. Point is, with robotics becoming more and more advanced each year, and with the whole very real idea of AI becoming more prominent and taking people's jobs, I think it's a stretch to see more advanced robots being made in the form of some of our favorite cartoon characters and then being used at theme parks. I don't think that's very much of a stretch. We might even have an entire family of Simpsons robots in the very near future. How ironic would that be?
Okay, next up we have the prediction of an all-consuming black hole forming in the year 2024. Fun stuff. In episode 16 of season 21, the citizens of Springfield gather to view the activation of the town's particle accelerator. But when the machine was turned on, two particles collided and created a small black hole. Lisa was the first to discover the anomaly when the black hole began sucking up her tears, and she quickly learned that the more the black hole consumed, the bigger and bigger it got. Well, Homer turned the black hole into a dumping ground, and eventually it got so big that it began to suck up everything in its path. The episode ended with the black hole sucking up the entirety of Springfield and eventually the world as a whole. It was obviously a Treehouse of Horror episode. Seems pretty far out, right? Well, maybe not. You see, in January of 2024, India launched a new X-ray satellite into space to observe the threat of black holes on our solar system. If The Simpsons got this one right, I'm thinking the satellite mission is probably a little more than just research.
Next on the list, we have 3D printed food. So in the episode Future Drama, Marge takes a picture of Bart and Lisa before prom and turns it into a 3D printed cake. Now, not only is 3D printing technology becoming more commonplace these days, but yes, 3D printed food is actually a thing. Food Inc. is a company specializing in this technology. They even came out with a restaurant where all the food is 3D printed. They described their company on their site as a one-of-a-kind gourmet experience in which all the food, all the utensils, and all the furniture are completely produced through 3D printing in an immersive futuristic space. We are a conceptual pop-up dinner series where fine cuisine meets art, philosophy, and tomorrow's technologies. So technically this is one that's already happened, but the question is, could 3D printed food become a thing in people's homes soon? Almost definitely. It's really just a matter of when. Also, I wouldn't be able to talk about the concept of 3D printed food without bringing up Star Trek. Yes, food replicators were a thing long before this episode came out, but in The Simpsons it's more specific to 3D printing technology, whereas in Star Trek, the food replicator works by converting energy into matter. It's a very different thing.
Next up, we have The Simpsons' prediction of World War III. The prediction was made in 1987 when the show was still fairly new. It was the 16th short of the series and it was titled simply World War III. Nail on the head. The episode begins with Homer frantically waking up his family and telling him that the Third World War has begun and that the first round of explosives have already been dropped. The family makes their way to an underground shelter only for Homer to tell them that he was in fact joking. Haha. In present-day reality, Homer's ramblings are not so much a joke, but rather a pretty scary warning of what might be to come. Considering the fact that there are currently 5 major wars taking place around the world, I'm thinking the prediction made by The Simpsons back in 1987 is looking far more like it was meant for the year 2024.
Alright, at number 6 we have Everyone is a Genius. We all see The Simpsons as a classic middle-class family, filling all the roles that we are comfortable with. But what if they are actually the smartest family in the world? We already know that Lisa is so smart it literally alienates her from the rest of the world, and she shows off her brilliance on several occasions. Every time Marge takes a break from raising a family, she excels at whatever she does. Even though Bart struggles in the confines of school, outside of that he is extremely resourceful and has been shown to be an almost genius level criminal. Maggie is probably the smartest baby ever, and there's even an episode where a crayon is removed from Homer's brain and it reveals that he is one of the smartest people in all of Springfield. At number 5 we have The Simpsons are actually super rich. Now the show is a cartoon that has been on almost longer than any other show. I know we're not counting like soap operas and stuff. I mean, it's very hard to dunk on days of your lives, but when a show has been on for that long, you gotta find crazier and crazier plots to keep the show interesting. But if the show was rooted in reality, how do the Simpsons buy everything and do everything and travel as much as they do? Well, I don't know if you guys remember the Simpsons character who was basically a billionaire supervillain, Hank Scorpio, but he ended up giving Homer the Denver Broncos. Homer owns that team, so if that's true, that would be enough capital for them to do whatever they want, whenever they want. They would literally be billionaires. At number 4 we have the Mole Man clones. Mole Man might be my favorite character in the whole show. He's just an old dude who is constantly used as a punchline. And by punchline, I mean they will have some sort of physical abuse happen to him. Everything from getting hit in the nuts to getting run off the road. Really, is there anything funnier than an old man getting hit in the nuts? You can try to look for hours. I don't think you'll find anything. But how can this weak old man take so much punishment and come right back up on his feet like he's in a Rocky movie? Well, some people say it's because it's not the same old guy every time. It's actually a bunch of clones that might have an underground layer and only send out clones to the surface when they need supplies. They do this to keep their secret safe and because they are afraid of the world, because it is a very hostile place for them. It seems like it's always trying to kill them, so they would have a very good reason to be afraid. And number 3 we have Mr. Burns wants the power plant to fail. Homer has made so many mistakes he should no longer be employed at the power plant. It doesn't make any sense that he has not been fired yet. Well, there is a simple reason to this, that Mr. Burns wants the power plant to melt down. The theory is that Mr. Burns has been betting on the power plant failing by taking out a ton of insurance claims on the buildings in Springfield, as well as the power plant. So if that thing goes boom, then Mr. Burns will make millions, if not billions of dollars. At number 2 we have Flanders burned down the Simpsons' home. In the episode Homer the Heretic, Homer has a change of faith. He no longer wants to go to church, which leads him to staying home on Sunday to smoke fat stogies and get wasted to the point where he passes out. Well, something that you should all know is don't fall asleep with a lit cigarette or cigar because you can burn your house down. The Simpsons' home goes up in flames, and who is there to save Homer when he's asleep while the house is burning? Well, it's the most heroic churchgoer of all time, Ned. But wait a minute, Ned is probably the most religious man in all of Springfield. Why was he not at church? He was also the one who was pushing Homer to go back to church. It could have been Ned who lit the house on fire and then saved Homer so he could both look like a hero and convince the town, if you're not gonna go to church, it will unleash the wrath of God. This way he could live in a town that is controlled by the church. And for the number 1 spot, we have Matt Groening was a friend of Jeffrey Epstein's. This is a tough pill to swallow. Now, if this is true, it doesn't mean that the show is dead to us, and there isn't any hard evidence against him, but I'll tell you guys a story, and then you can put the pieces together yourself and make your own call. Virginia Guffrey was one of the biggest voices that came out after Epstein was arrested. She claimed that Jeffrey Epstein was flying around to perform sexual favors from the time she was only 15. She told one story where she was flying on Jeffrey's private plane, and Matt Groening, the creator of The Simpsons, was coming along with them. On the flight, Epstein suggested that Guffrey give Groening a foot massage, which she did, and before he got off the plane, Groening drew Virginia Guffrey a picture of Bart and then signed it. Now, The Simpsons creator may have not known the girl's age, and maybe never had a relationship with Epstein outside of this flight, but the whole thing makes the guy look super guilty and like he is a massive creep. Alright everyone, that has been our list, and as promised, I'm going to be doing some more pet shoutouts. Remember, if you want me to shout out your pet, you can hit me up on Instagram. I pick new pets every day, so if you don't get picked one day, you can message back back another day. I usually pick to message last, so just like message me again and again or whatever. If it takes me a little while to get back to you, I am very sorry. I have a lot of these to do, and without taking any longer, let's shout out some pets. First, we have Kitty, who is a beautiful black cat. After that, we have this beautiful little shaggy dog who is hanging out all on his own. I think he has some money there too. God, this dog is so cute. And then we have Bella, who's looking so cute with a little hat on. It's her birthday in this picture. What a sweetheart. Everyone wish her a happy birthday. Then we have a trio of chihuahuas with some boozy names. First, we got Tequila, then Margarita, then Vodka. That is a team of party dogs. And to close it out, we have Monty, who is the best little floofer of all time. Look at a little floofy dog. You just want to hold him like this and just go like, and just kiss him on his little nose.